Our guest tonight is from New York City, USA, Douglas Robbins. Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts either through their industry insights and information or simply learning from them. And today, Douglas Robbins, writer, thinker, seeker, podcast host, and several things more. And we'll be talking about not just writing, obviously writing, but about so many things like interconnectedness, success in life, writing, and much, much more. Welcome to the show, Douglas.
Thank you, sir. How are you today? Thank you for having me.
I'm good. Glad to have you. In fact, it's a very, very, big pleasure for me to have a person like you. Mostly it's about marketing, about other stuff, but talking about these things is totally different, soul satisfying.
Sounds great.
Okay. So Douglas, straight way to the question about, what you talk about interconnectedness. It is something which we Indians talk about a lot. What does interconnectedness mean to you exactly?
Well, it's a great question. And I think a lot of it comes back to where we grew up culturally. The US is probably a little bit more of isolationist, people kind of on their own, rugged individuality. And we're not really taught as much outside of the family unit about community and interconnectedness and helping each other. And sure, be kind to an old lady crossing the street, but that's not really part of our culture. It's more of that dog eat dog world kind of thing. Fight tooth and nail, and everyone's your competition. But that's not really joy. That isn't love. That isn't interconnectedness. That isn't how we all move forward. And so it's always, looking at someone else and saying, well, what do they have that I want? Or what do I have that they're trying to take from me? And this is a very self-centered ideology and ultimately leaves us all empty. So the interconnectedness is we all have similarities. You're in India, I'm in New York, but we all care about similar things: family, love, joy, laughter, the earth, going out into the sun. So we all share this, and yet it's sort of pushed aside for consumerism or external expectations that ultimately don't fulfill you. You can get a brand new car and yay, but that doesn't fill you inside. And only the interconnectedness, the love, the joy, self-expression, these are the things, that's the beauty that often gets hidden under the soil of consumerism and demand and external resources.
Right. So does soul anywhere come in this interconnected explanation of or thinking of yours?
Say again?
Soul, interconnection of souls. Do you also want to talk about that? Does it figure in this your definition of interconnectedness?
Yes. I mean, that's really the key to all of it, right? Is the soul of the person. If we didn't have souls, if we didn't have the spirit, if we weren't part of the divine consciousness, well, we'd simply be worker ants kind of moving around and buying things and working and procreating. There'd be no internal connectedness. There'd be no higher self. There'd be no aspirations. It would simply just be going day to day and going about our business, war and eating and procreating. But the soul, that's where the interconnectedness is, right? That's where that beauty is, that harmony. I actually did a recent podcast and I had looked up the DNA of animals, and we share DNA with trees, 50%, something like dolphins, 80%, every animal on the planet, even slugs and worms, we share DNA with. So we kind of disassociate ourselves from this, but we are all interconnected. We all rely on each other. But yeah, I mean, when we kind of peel back the ego and the ego mind and sort of the 20th century thinking of, like I said, consumerism, and you get back to the essence of who we are, right? That's where the love is, and that's where that beauty is. And it's a very strange thing today. I'm sure you're aware that Russia is bombing the Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely.
Really horrible, and it's all about power and ego and control. No love. But it's like you're bombing your cousins, you're bombing your relatives. We are all, again, interrelated. We all have a purpose. We all have universal consciousness, God consciousness, whatever you want to refer to it as, that we are here to fulfill and express ourselves. And by doing that, we can help others fulfill their intention as well.
Right. One big challenge, with what you call interconnectedness and thinking about other human beings and, talking about consumeristic culture is how do you still succeed? What is success to you? How do you define it? And how do you see success vis-a-vis interconnectedness or consumerist culture as such?
Well, it's a curious thing, right? Because it's often we're taught, get mine. I got to get mine.
Right.
At any cost, right? It doesn't matter who we hurt. I'm getting mine. And that's really damaging, because even if you get yours, you're probably empty. Plenty of billionaires who are depressed and suicidal. Plenty of successful people who are depressed and suicidal. So that success does not necessarily attribute to deep satisfaction, deep joy. So when, for instance, I wrote this book called Love in a Dying Town recently. And it was really about honoring people, honoring the struggle, honoring. So it's about a single father trying to raise a daughter in a dying factory town. Not glamorous. He's not a movie star, but he's a part of me. He's a part of everyone, struggle, fighting for what's right in his life, trying to live an honorable life. And that's success to me. When you can fulfill an expression, when you can fulfill love, and you can lift someone else up, we don't have to tear someone down to lift ourselves up. And that's often what we're sort of taught, right? If that guy's winning, well, I can't win. But that's not true. I mean, obviously in sports, that's a little different. But in life, there's plenty of room at the top, so to speak. And my writing success, for instance, is not at the loss of someone else's. It's not about me harming someone. And there are plenty of people who, as I'm sure you know in your own family or friend set, that don't understand when you're moving forward, when you're you're not the person you were 20 years ago, for instance. Well, you've really changed. And they don't like that because they're stuck. They're in that same place. So in a sense, they're trying to keep you where they are, how they know you. But if you're the same person you were 20 years ago, there's a problem. You should be changing. You should be evolving. You should be healing. You should be honoring yourself. And by honoring yourself, you honor others.
Right. Talking about your book, Doug, Love in a Dying Town, amidst all your life you have seen in the US, and still you are able to, so much of consumerism around, and still you have been able to think about a theme called a single father raising his daughter, in a factory town, and that in a factory town, and still telling her, the difference between right and wrong, and and even if their world is crumbling down, around them, he's teaching them the right thing to do. That's what all people should do. Whoever they meet, that's what they should teach. But unfortunately, it's not happening. How did you get the idea of such a great idea, actually?
Well, it's very kind of you. I have worked in factory towns. I have been there. And it's a tough life. It's a tough life to eke out. The pay is not good. You're on your feet day and night. it's a struggle just to make it through the day. I married a woman who had children from a previous marriage, and I was so close with the daughter, who's my daughter. She's adopted now. Um, and I thought, like, how would this child, this little precious angel, this precious innocent little spirit, be in that type of setting? Who would I be in that type of setting? And I think it had started, the seed for the idea came from Flint, Michigan, which is an old automobile factory town. And a number of years ago, and it's still going on, they had a real issue with a water crisis. A lot of the water was polluted. And it just got me thinking, like, people still have to live there. They're still trying to thrive. They're still trying to raise families and again, interact and go to the store and take care, of the neighbors. And how would it be to live there? How would it be to live in that setting, trying to put food on the table and raise a child? And raise a child where there are foreclosures, houses being boarded up, people moving, migrating out of the area, an exodus. How would that look to a child? And so it could be very damaging, right? A child absorbs everything like a sponge. So it could be, oh my God, the world is horrible and there's no hope, right? Without hope, we're lost.
Yes.
And so the father sacrifices himself quite often. He has dreams that he wants to leave the town and be an architect in, New York City or in Boston or some big city, but he can't. He's kind of tethered there and trapped there. And there's a kind of a crazy ex-wife who again just wants champagne taste with on a beer budget and just wants all these fancy things, but does nothing to help herself. So his job in his mind, at all costs, I must protect this child and show her light and show her right from wrong. And by doing so, he's creating a strong teen and ultimately a strong adult who goes into the world with love in her heart, with kindness, with intelligence, but also understanding what struggle is. And so it's sort of a town of interconnectedness. It is a town that people have to rely on each other because you can't be isolated in that type of town and make it through. So it was really just, how would I raise this daughter? How would, anyone make it through in that type of setting? And again, interconnectedness, kindness, helping each other out.
So Douglas, in a town like that, with a setting like that, and everything crumbling around, how does a father like that tell to a daughter like that about what success exactly is and what will the daughter learn?
Well, it's a great question because she learns success through the eyes of her father. And the success isn't, and also he has the illusion that only his success is being an architect, right? But he learns along the way that there are other successes and a much broader and deeper success. And that is love, compassion, taking care of each other. So, for instance, he's handy around the house because you have to be when you're in that setting. You can't hire people you don't have the money for. So you by demand, you are forced into being contracting and doing all sorts of work around the house. So he starts doing work around the house, and at some point in the story, she says, "Hey, Daddy, my teacher needs some help at her house." And so it becomes that he doesn't become an architect, but he becomes a contractor helping people. She shows him, or he shows her success in he meets another woman. There is a bit of a love story, who also is a single mother with a child, happens to be the daughter's best friend, and shows success in those ways. So the success isn't so much external, like we were speaking about earlier, having the car and the fancy
Right.
house. That's all nice. But the success is how you treat others, how you demonstrate yourself in the world, how you handle certain crises or situations. That's where success is. That's where the essence of our best selves lay. Not in, oh, I have $1 million or I have a fancy Lamborghini in my driveway. That's an illusion, right? That doesn't actually mean success as far as fulfillment. Fulfillment is very different than I have a Lamborghini, but I have debt up to my ears. That's not success. I mean, you might have that and success, but we look at it in a very strange manner. We're taught, especially in the US, I don't know, so much in India, but consumerism, right? It's sort of a religion in America. Buy this, go to college, get debt, buy a house, have cars, have this, have that. And that's fine. But that's why everyone's coming out of college in debt. That's why it's a debtor nation. Everyone has debt. And people then become trapped in this consumer world. And then, well, how do you fulfill yourself when you're busy 8-10 hours a day, going to a job, maybe commuting an hour plus a day? That's why most people feel trapped, or many people feel trapped in jobs they don't want to be at, maybe not making enough money to free themselves. So really, it comes back to this essence, this fulfillment. I did a recent show on the difference between IQ, the intelligent quotient, and EQ, the emotional quotient.
Right.
And really, it's about the emotional quotient, how we navigate life. It's not, oh, I know
Right.
statistics or I know World War II information. That's good. That's information. But that doesn't help you navigate life or become an adult, a fulfilled adult. So that's really what I'm always trying to get at, is this deeper sense that we're kind of shortchanging ourselves, even in education. Again, it's mostly about regurgitative information, math, science, whatever it might be, all good,
Right.
rounds us out, but it's not teaching us how to become an enriched adult, because that's ultimately what school should be providing. How to handle money and investments and
Absolutely.
everything else. We're not taught these things, and that's a big disservice to our children.
Right. Right. Doug, coming back to the story itself, Love in a Dying Town, you see, the father is trying to do something good for the daughter,
Yes.
whereas you have created a character of a wife who loves wine. And being so close to that whole setting, I'm talking about the larger picture, because I've seen several cases, so many of them, that being in the finest of surroundings among the best of men or the best of women, there is a or the group of people who still don't get it. Maybe it's the IQ, but in your case, if it's the wine loving woman, her responsibility is towards her child, but the father understands it, but she is not able to comprehend that. Why is that happening? And if you take it a larger context, how in the society, like a person like you who is so concerned about it, even I am concerned, maybe I'll not be able to, I'm not as a great writer like you are, you know but you are able to express it. So many are not able to express that the way they are, but also we got so many so-called, if you permit me, so many bad apples around, and staying around so many good apples. How does that happen? I would like to understand from your story itself.
So the wife, Megan, is a very damaged person. She came into the relationship very damaged. The child had been unplanned, and wherever you go, there you are. You bring your baggage with you. You bring your beliefs and your emotional traumas with you, and so she had was sort of sexually abused as a child. She was belittled as a child. And similar to how her father treated her mother, she was sort of part of the background and not really honored and loved. So there's a line in the story, something along the lines of he worked all day and night, hard in the factory. He didn't also have love to give. He was worn down himself, embittered, similar, just feeling trapped. And so she grew up with a very twisted sense of herself, that her body was to be used. Men wanted her because they wanted her body. They didn't love her. And so she couldn't love in that way. She couldn't trust love. It was too scary. She could have intercourse with men. She could get drunk with men. But there was a line she couldn't really cross, and that was trusting love or being vulnerable. So she was trapped in that mindset, in that belief system. And that was something that she had developed from a childhood into adulthood. And she did not know how to heal it. She didn't know where to heal it, or even if it needed healing. This was her reality. This was who she was. And nothing was going to touch it because it was too much pain. I'm sure you've met people who are trapped and do not want to touch that pain. They do not want to heal that pain.
Right. In fact, I want to understand from your perspective of your story itself that didn't you try to heal the lady in the book, or I want to understand that do they not get it, or do they not, or they know it, or they don't know it?
Well, let me answer it in a couple of ways. So as she developed, so because she didn't know how to heal or be vulnerable in love, she once again looked to the externals to satisfy her. And that's why she was all about, you don't make enough money, I deserve better, I want a fancy kitchen, I want a new car. Because thinking those sort of ornaments hanging from her life are going to satisfy or heal those places. But they don't heal those places, right? They're momentary kind of fixes, like when we're eating for comfort, we put some food in there, stimulating that emotional place, but it doesn't actually heal that place. So she was looking to the external to satisfy her. But to get back to your question, she knew she was damaged. She knew she was in pain, but it was too scary of a place to enter. Therefore, she couldn't. Like, she tried a little bit. She wanted to believe in the love. She wanted to trust the love. But ultimately, the damage and the pain and that negative voice that we all carry, rah, 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 always chattering at us, was too much for her to overcome. And so eventually, it really undermined her, and she had to leave because it was too much pain to be with a child who wouldn't sort of follow her every whim, and with a husband who demanded more of her. And so she wasn't demanding of herself. She was drinking and kind of escaping, but she didn't know how to heal. And I think that's a lot of things, to get back to the interconnectedness.
Yes.
We often feel very isolated.
Right.
And when you feel isolated, you feel like, well, what's the point? How am I supposed to heal? How am I supposed to move forward? I'm all alone. Right. And that's a terrible place to be. I've been there. Depression. It's awful.
Yes.
And that's because our culture really is to blame. I mean, the family is a unit, but you're beyond the family. You're beyond that. You have to live in the world. And it's just not designed that way. I'm going to give you one great example. There was an indigenous culture, tribal community, maybe in Africa or in South America, and had not had a lot of contact with the outside world. And there were children playing, and all the children kept sharing. Even the older kids who were faster and stronger kept sharing with the younger kids. And the reporter's like, well, what are you doing? You won the game. No, but this little child wouldn't get any. So he said, look, let's play a new game. Whoever can run over here the fastest gets this candy. And there were only a few pieces of candy. So, of course, the biggest kids run over there and get the candy. And the reporter said, okay, good job. You get to keep this for yourself. And as soon as he handed it to himself, he started breaking off pieces, the kid who won, and handed it out. He said, why would you do that? You're the fastest and the strongest. He's like, right. And this little one is the weakest and the slowest. If I didn't give him anything, he wouldn't have anything. And so it was this really powerful moment that we can all share with interconnectedness ideology. But if we all think, oh, gimme, I'm going to go run over here and eat it and hoard it. Well, what does that do for you? Now it's all about selfishness. You don't even feel good about yourself when you act like that. So that's the problem, is we all often, I do as well, often feel isolated, disconnection. Right. And then you watch, say, social media or the news, and that makes it feel even worse.
Absolutely. And in fact, that's why I asked, there are so many people, whether men, women, in different settings, who are going through the same thing, and they also need help. Yeah. Many also want to be helped. They seek out help. Sometimes it leads to disastrous results, unfortunate outcomes. That should not be. And that is why I asked that it's also not only about just, also about interconnectedness, EQ, as well as empathy. Empathy, where that the society has come to a level which is not the society that you talked about, that the winner shares it with the weakest. Yeah. There's nothing. You only win because you have won, but the resources are the same, and that's the difference. In fact, talking from your story itself, you see what the father was teaching the child, the same should be taught by the world leaders today.
Yes.
And that is where the question of Ukraine, I will not go into the politics of it, but whatever is happening, even world organizations like the UN or the other democratic world, we are not able to stop it in a thing like in a time like this. We thought that World War II was the end of it. There will never be a war again. But here we are in this new century, staring at a conflict in a very different manner. That's how do you look at it? And that the way as things stand today, and not the political part of, but the humanitarian part of it.
From a global or macro point of view, leadership is well, I can speak more to the U.S. leadership. It's in a bad place. It's not in a good place. There's a lot of factions and undermining ideas, and again, the fake news culture now is really undermining, because what it's undermining is information, is true information. So if the brain, they did a study a few years ago that people can't really tell the difference between fake news and real news, and then they process it and interpret it as fact, and that becomes their narrative. Well, that's a very dangerous place to be, obviously.
Absolutely.
A few years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, what did you had, a few television stations, 4 or 5 stations, before cable and before social media. You had half a dozen places to get information from on the TV, and then you had some newspapers. Now you have thousands and thousands and thousands of places. You don't know who these people are. Anyone can get a website. And so that's part of the danger. So that kind of buffers. You have the leadership up here. You have kind of the media here. And then you have a lot of the leadership taking this false narrative and running with it. I'm sure you've heard of QAnon in the US, and a lot of conspiracy theories, and who won the election and all this craziness.
Yes. Yes.
And it's very damaging to the populace, because the role of leadership, in my opinion, is to be honorable, have integrity, and provide information for the populace to make informed decisions for what suits their needs best, what they're interested in, what they care about, education, the environment, whatever it might be. But because you have such a cauldron, a chaotic cauldron of information, misinformation, and you have the 24-hour news cycle, and there's so much drama now. You can't just hear information, right? It's always drama, the nth degree of drama. And this is a real disservice, and it's really undermining our democracy. And it's fractioning sections of political parties, and misinforming people as far as, well, for instance, climate change, right? A lot of people, I don't believe it. I don't believe in climate change. It's like, well, look around. I mean, use your eyes, use your head.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of hard to understand some of this. And some people, I don't know about you, but with the social media, with the fake news, I mean, there are cousins I can't even talk to anymore because they're so entrenched in crazy conspiracies that you can't even have a conversation like in reality any longer with a lot of people. So, but leadership, it's almost a misnomer calling many of these people leaders.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I don't know what they're leading exactly. They're not necessarily leading us forward, which is what a leader should be doing. A lot of them, I think this is very true in India as well. Like there's, an establishment class that really runs the nation. The political action committees, the big money donors, again, consumerism, the big money in politics undermines politics. It's the one thing that can undermine it, and it's the one thing that runs rampant. So globally, or on a macro level, you have leaders leading us in the wrong direction, meaning they're not, say, taking climate change seriously, or they're not honoring the election, or a number of issues, very political. But
Right.
on a smaller scale, and so they're failing us in that way. To me, civic duty is very important. Like that should be a part of your life. We're, again, disconnected from the discourse, disconnected from, for instance, waste. I know India creates a lot of waste. We create a lot of waste. Well, where does it go? We don't see it. It's out of sight, out of mind. And I think if people actually saw things, experienced it a little bit more, they would go, yeah, we need to do something about that. And that's why there's a disconnection additionally, because we're out of sight, out of mind. We push it aside. And what do you do with things you don't want to deal with? You push it aside. But on a smaller scale, and it's something I struggle with also, is, again, community, being kind to the kid at the grocery store. All these little experiences of kindness or acts of kindness are ripple effects, because someone can be having a bad day and you can add to it, go, hurry up, or I'm busy. Everybody thinks it's about them. And you just take a moment and you say, hey, thank you so much for that. I sincerely appreciate it. This makes a difference in someone's life who maybe isn't feeling so good. The old line, everyone is fighting a battle you cannot see. Well, it's true. We all, once again, same thing with the character in the book, carrying our own baggage, having that negative voice. So if someone comes out and breaks us out of that, we feel a little self-respect all of a sudden. We feel, oh, I am worthwhile. And I think that's the trouble, is we're made to feel unworthy of love, unworthy of honor, made to feel small when you look at the beautiful, successful people in the newspaper. So the leadership, I'm not sure if they're actual leaders, because a leader is supposed to be honorable,
Right.
with integrity, understand the needs of the
Who
unit
could
under
lead?
him.
Who could lead actually?
who can lead. But a lot of it is just back and forth discourse. And obviously, there's often a puppet master behind all this, pulling the strings. So that interconnectedness gets severed. And that's the scary part, is it gets severed. And the question is, how do we reestablish it? Well, we reestablish it at the ground level. And you and me and other people say, hey, how are you today? How are you doing? How's your family? Can I help you with anything? Again, just little pieces. And it's a part of ourselves extending. So to get back to fulfillment or success, it's that self-expression, love, kindness. How does that make you feel when you do something nice? It makes you feel good. You don't lose a piece of yourself, you gain a piece of yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, earlier we read, that too many cooks spoil the broth. Now there are so many cooks, and the cauldron is also very caustic. So
Yes.
everybody is cooking their own stuff in the same cauldron, making it even deadlier. And there are cooks which are growing in number. But what is I'll come to your other book also. I want to come to that book. But what do you see the future of all this? Because at the end of the day, humanity and humans and human being as human beings have to be there. And how do they do that? Is it the only way that you realize that you are human, and the person crossing the street is human, and the child in a grocery store is also human, and the person who is rushing for the same lift, as both of you are in a hurry, is also human, and the lady who is crossing the street, she is human. Is it the only way? How do you see it, Doug?
Well, I'll answer this. So, though, if you look at the news and you look at politics, it's ugly, it's scary, it makes you feel horrible, feel small, powerless. But if you look more locally, there are more, for instance, there are more juice shops opening up, organic restaurants opening up,
Okay,
people doing more in that regard. So there's more community activism, I think, in that way. People saying, maybe we need to reevaluate. And we often think it comes from the top down, but it often starts from the bottom up. That's where change happens, is from the bottom up. So that's the thing that is encouraging. For instance, with the pandemic,
indeed.
a lot of people leaving cities, and there's all sorts of craziness with the housing market and the bubble and all these things. But there's a real shift going on. People saying, I don't really want to work that many hours any longer. Maybe we can get by with less.
Absolutely.
There's a website, I don't remember what it's called. It's essentially about not buying. It's sort of sharing and bartering and just kind of a free website. And there are millions and millions of people on it now just saying, hey, don't buy because everything is very expensive right now.
Right.
Or more expensive than usual. Supply line issues and labor issues. So this website is about just bringing goods and services to people for free. Hey, don't buy that. You have an old chair. Well, let's give it to this person. He needs that. So it's, again, interconnectedness. And that's the thing social media can bring,
Right.
is an interconnectedness that couldn't exist before. So it's a messy world, the social media, but it can also do a lot of good. So I think stepping back, from it, if we step away from all the noise, and there's a lot of noise, and get back to, there are changes taking place. There are people trying to clean the oceans. There are people coming up with devices that eliminate the need for oil and need for gas. There's a lot of people, innovation, and it's not the government. It's people who are doing it on their own dime, on their own interest, because they care. And that's where the ripple effects are. It's not, I'm expecting Joe Biden, who's 78, to come up with something. He's not the mover and the shaker. He's not the next generation. He's not the innovator. So it's these people who are trying to clean the ocean of plastics. It's, like there's so many people doing amazing things, planting. India just planted millions and millions of trees or saplings. It's fascinating. Changes the carbon footprint. And so that alters the CO2 in the atmosphere. So like these are amazing things to me. It is scary. The glaciers are melting, and that's a challenge, obviously, and that will continue to raise sea levels and the temperature of the earth. But I think there are a lot of people doing wonderful things. It's always the question is, how do we connect to them? For instance, there's we live just outside the Hudson River, a famous old river, New York City, New York, runs basically down the eastern side of New York.
Hudson River is the river of hope. The pilot put what you call saved so many people.
Yes,
so
sir.
You talk about hope, Actually, we're talking about hope. Hope for everybody. That's very encouraging. Yeah,
yes.
Carry on.
No, and it's a beautiful story. And what's so fascinating about that is he took such risk by making his decision. If he had listened to air traffic control, he would have crashed.
Yeah, right.
Because they thought he had enough fuel or height to get to the New Jersey airport. He did not. It gives me chills thinking about it, because talk about heroism and just making this decision. But what's also fascinating about that story is it happened during the winter, and there weren't a lot of boats or ships on the Hudson River at that time. If there had been, there would have been hundreds.
Miracle on the Hudson.
It is a miracle indeed. So, I think what happens, AJ, is people ultimately, I don't care which side of the aisle you are on politically, or even what you think politically. I think people in general know right from wrong. They want to be good people. They want to be helpful people. But it's the mind that gets polluted with racist ideas or hate, or you can't trust this person because they believe in that. Or it becomes this real severing of our true selves, which is, I think, love and a moral guidance, and this corruption of thought and belief that, again, you can't trust, or you have to hate instead of love. But, who are you hurting with hate? You're hurting yourself as well, because you're carrying around this virus that eats at you. So, again, I think most people, and you probably can speak to this as well, I think really want to do well and be honorable and honest. And it has nothing to do with your politics.
Right, Doug. You're absolutely right. And, talking about, you have also passed through a lot of tough times yourself, if I understand, and your challenges and all. So, and perhaps heal yourself in the process. Or I'm not sure about how exactly you did it, but can you share some part? My main question is that you are a writer. You write. You have written several books. Can writing, help somebody heal in that whole process? So, just wanted to connect it with you.
I remember Steven Spielberg had said about movies. He said he never went to a psychologist because movies helped him heal, or writing movies helped him heal. It's a process. Obviously, I'm not. I'm better than I was. I'm lighter than I was. Writing can certainly help you get at things you didn't even know you were thinking. the more you kind of dive into ideas and stories and characters, the more you get at the cause or the root of an idea that is maybe plaguing you. But no, I've done a lot of work with healing, um, meditations, and all sorts of healers. And but part of healing is you have to have the guts to look at where you're hurting.
Oh,
And if you're running away from what is harming you, what keeps kind of repeating, you're not going to move forward. You're going to be the same person you were 10 years ago, the same person you're going to be in 10 years. Because as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, it's a familiar past, meaning the ideas and stories you tell yourself are familiar. Therefore, you believe them because they seem like the gospel or they seem like truth. And if you don't change them, and a lot of them are just stories we tell ourselves. Well, my father didn't love me the way I needed to be loved, or my parents did this or that to me, and therefore I'm never going to heal. Well, is that happening now? Did whatever happened to you 30 years ago, is that still happening now? No, but the loop is happening now. So, the saying is, we create thoughts that create emotions, and those emotions create beliefs, and those beliefs become personality. And the actions we take come from that. So, but if you start unraveling that, saying, yeah, that doesn't really seem like true, and that's not helping me, that doesn't feel right, that's not who I want to be. We often have conflicts between, again, this essence or this part that we want to become, and these old sort of bricks around our neck that we're just dragging around everywhere we go. Hey, who wants to listen next time? Who wants to listen to my same old story? And it's just a story, a lot of it. It's a story we've taught ourselves, okay, the world's a dangerous place. I'm not safe. I can't be vulnerable. I can't be, but it's not true. A lot of this is just, that self-made prison. And so, again, anything, you can unravel these knots. And you can say, this isn't who I want to be any longer. And so, again, meditation, healing work, whatever you want to call it, can save your life. It can save your life.
and writing too.
Writing as well. Again, writing is this fascinating place. So a lot of people, on a parallel answer, a lot of people journal where they're stuck. I want to be in this place and I'm feeling bad. A lot of people live in that fight or flight life, always ready to fight or run because they feel like everyone's out to get them. Well, writing can help and journaling can help, right? A lot of people journal every day why they're feeling whatever, and it helps bring it out into the surface, into the consciousness, instead of sort of that computer program of the subconscious. But writing is a fascinating process because I wrote the story Narican, the Cloaked Deception. It was a very strange thing because it kind of came to me from another place, and it's really about the evolution of souls, and it really means is our evolution, expanding into that powerful realm in which we come from. And it's also a little bit about media corruption, and where does media get this information and who's behind all that. So, but the evolution of souls is you have opposing forces. You have one side trying to corrupt you and belittle you and keep you small, and the other side trying to enhance you and help you evolve into your best, most powerful self. And so essentially, and in the story, it's sort of like Earth is a battleground for this in the dimensional realities of the soul. And so that's kind of what the story is. It's like, well, isn't that interesting? Because we all feel this tug of war within us. And so that's what it's about, is that this character who happened to actually be from another planet, but he doesn't know that. and he's born to a surrogate family actually to protect him from these dark forces that are hunting him down and want to corrupt him, because if they can stop him, they can stop the evolution of souls and plunge the earth into eternal darkness, and therefore stopping souls from evolving.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, storyline. In fact, I was about to ask, but it's good you mentioned, about evolution of souls and everything around it. But tell me, this is the in your story, it's about somebody coming from outer space, some other planet. But when people on the same planet, they are also souls, and why people, especially when you are around whoever you are, in family, friends, or even as society, why there are several factors or personas or people around you who try to be not so good to you, almost destroy you sometimes. And then there are some people, even strangers, who try and do their best to save you. How do you understand this in the backdrop of your book and story?
Well, again, I mean, people bring who they are to the table, and if you're damaged, you're going to damage someone else. I mean, the saying is hurt people, and that's just how it goes and will go throughout time. And so a stranger might be in a better place, might see you clearly, might be able to, won't be maybe in that pain, and say, hey, here's someone that I like what this person's doing. I'm going to help this person or honor this person. So, all that emotional baggage covers the soul, covers that true intention. It blocks the soul because it's scared of coming out and saying, here I am, because the emotional place, especially when you're a child, is scared and vulnerable. So you're taught, if you get injured, you go, oh, I'm going to pull away from this. I can get hurt here. I'm going to hide this part of me. But the problem with hiding the part of you, it just hurts you. Right? Now this part that you want to get out, oh, the brain will say, well, yeah, but I have to protect you here. But you're not protecting me, because the part of me that needs to flourish is being hidden by the ego. So there are people in our family who, they're damaged, and there's a great line that I heard recently. It's like, more people have killed dreams that love you than strangers ever could.
Absolutely.
And so it's just, and it's awful. Obviously, the people closest to us are the ones that we're most vulnerable to. We look to our parents or close, siblings or relatives. And when we're children, we see them as almost gods reflecting back to us. And so if they're reflecting back negatives or they're angry, we interpret that as, oh, I must not be good enough. And now here becomes the separation of my higher self and now my lower self, the ego mind, the emotions are blocking this and saying, oh, no, maybe you're not that. And they start this narrative of, oh, I need to be small. I need to play small here.
Right. Talking of souls, Doug, do you believe in souls?
Do I believe in souls? Yes, of course.
You do. Because,
and the spirit as well.
Tell me about it. That's nice.
Well, what I understand is this, and is the spirit is the divine essence that always remains this higher place, essentially with God or with the universal consciousness. The soul comes down to earth to experience, to learn, to grow. But again, it can, in my opinion, in my experience, it can get trapped. And that's why you have that longing, right? You have the I want to be this, I want to get there, because you've trapped yourself with the belief system that you can't get there, you're not worthy, whatever it might be. But that soul, no matter what, continues to call out. So in the story, the Narican cloaked in the Cloaked Deception,
right?
The soul is a beacon It is always an ever-present beacon. No matter how much negativity is put on there, darkness is put on it, it is still the beacon of light that is unbreakable. And that is what the dark forces are trying to essentially figure the code out to enter and break that beacon.
And so, as a writer, for you, how do you see love? If you have to, because you have written books around it, you have characters who are in love, and so as a writer, how do you view love as whatever love is?
Well, love is many things, right? We often attribute it to romantic love, but it is a love of a father and a child, of a child. It is the love of a neighbor, not being in love, but seeing, say, a neighbor in need. Well, it's love and kindness and empathy that drives us to go help the neighbor, help someone whose car has broken down. So love is a very curious thing because we often will deny ourselves love. Oh, I don't love me, but you love someone else. And again, it's almost like we're able to, like, it's acceptable to love someone else, to help someone else. And then it's acceptable to deny yourself. Nah, I'm no good. I'm not worthy. That person's better. But everyone's looking at you the same way. Everyone's always comparing themselves. You think you're just comparing yourself to whomever, but they're comparing to you as well. And so love is the glue. It is the absolute glue that holds it all together. Whether it's helping a neighbor, a child, or even trying to honor yourself, saying, I deserve love. I'm going to honor myself. I'm doing something right now called the 100-day challenge that my wife and I came up with, about how do I commit to me 100%, not in a selfish manner, in a fulfilling manner. Am I giving myself 100%? Am I honoring myself, loving myself 100%? And quite often, if we really look in the mirror, we're not. All right, I worked today. I'm kind of tired. I'm just going to eat some pizza or whatever it might be, and escape and do it again the next day. But is that really committing to me? Am I moving myself forward today? So, reflecting back and saying, I deserve love. I deserve actions of love. But if we all look at it in that way, I'm not saying to give away all of our money or all of our resources or something. You obviously take care of yourself and whatever, but you still are trying to be kind and generous to people. For instance, if we're at a restaurant and we really like the waitress, we give her some extra money. It's okay. She needs it. It's nice to be generous, to acknowledge people. So that's love for me, is if we kind of come into the world with that mindset, at the supermarket, hey, how can I make the world a little better here? That's love.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because you see, we talked about love, who have got love, hurt love, fulfilled love. Then we got souls. Then we got interconnection. And it is whole life, one life, or it can be many lives also. But if we take it as only one life, with so much of things happening in your life and your life around, at the end of the day, there has to be an end of it. It is an end of your life, but what about the closure part? Whether you had a good life or not so good life, whether you acknowledged it or did not acknowledge it, did not have the wherewithal to understand it, or just it been unfortunate. How does one find closure in all that stuff?
In what? In knowing death and knowing that we're mortal?
No, knowing death and closing the chapter, even if one has been unfortunate or it's been an unfulfilled life. Do you think it's going to be like a sort of another meeting at another planet?
I think when you leave this plane, you're free of all the suffering. and you go back to a pure divine consciousness. Do I believe in reincarnation? Yes. I've seen too much to think otherwise. You know, again, we get trapped, and this is the tragedy, is we get trapped between here. We anticipate or interpret that someone else is going to do it, but we beat them to it. Oh, they're going to do this and that. And it's so curious when the mind creates these narratives. Oh, and you know, say something is going to happen, or you think something is going to happen because you're going to an event and you know someone's going to treat you poorly, or your interpretation is that the mind is almost wrong every time. Almost wrong every time when it thinks something bad is going to happen or whatever it thinks. And so it traps us in this, and then we don't even acknowledge, oh, I was wrong. The brain was wrong. So you have a lifetime of this then, right? Of starting when you're a kid and everyone's going to hurt you and you can't do this because you're going to get hurt. But again, it's just this story, this endless loop. And if you go through life like this, broken basically, heartbroken, avoiding everything you might actually love and maybe a place you might thrive, you look back on life and it really, that's a tragedy. Because you've created, you know, you can look at life as heaven or hell. And it's how you look at everything makes life heaven or hell, right? You can look at any event in any number of ways, but it's, again, how you're interpreting it or how you're perceiving it or how you desire to think about it is all up to you. I can say, oh, great, whatever baseball team won, oh, boo-hoo, another and how it affects you. Oh, good for them. They're an excellent team. Great. But it's any story, thousands of stories a day. Our brain is always trying to anticipate and tell you what it's going to be or not. And again, it's wrong most of the time. So if you have a lifetime of that, and especially if it's a negative story, think of how much disease you're causing yourself, how much anguish and stress you're causing yourself. The autonomic nervous system is the fight or flight. We're in this stressful world. We're often living in that, not in the parasympathetic, which is a relaxed state. So we're always waiting for someone to fend someone off, but it's mostly because of this that's causing this. So if you have a lifetime of this, and they say, oh, AJ, he was just bitter because of something that happened 70 years ago, there's a responsibility. And I think most people don't realize, or maybe haven't learned, that there are ways of healing and breaking these old patterns. Okay, your parents didn't give you this, or your sister did that to you, or some maybe horrific thing happened. Well, it's not happening now. It's only happening now in here. So this is where we have to learn how to break these patterns, let them go, put new patterns in, new thoughts. That's not going to be who I am. I'm not going to be a victim to that. So you can change the outcome by changing where you are now. So with meditation, with anything else, it's about the present moment. The past, you can't change the past. The future is sort of an unknown place. But you can change. The power is in the now. And so if you can change your outlook, you can change your future, you can change your life. If you remain stuck in that past, you're going to keep living that same past. So that's the tragedy, right? Is we create most of this ourselves.
So the power is in the now. That's
our only time. We think it's the past, we think it's the future, and we get trapped in these thoughts. But the truth is, you never live in the future. You don't live in the past. You live in the now, and it's such a strange phenomenon that the brain, right, kind of goes to the past or goes to this euphoric, ideal future. It's all going to be great then. just give me, it's just going to be great in the future. Well, it's only going to be great in the future if you take care of the present. The present is where you can plant seeds for the future to grow.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Doug, where can one find your books if they want to get, some lovely books you have written?
Well, thank you. You can find, you can check out my website, douglasrobbinsauthor.com, or Amazon. You can find, we got to type in Douglas Robbins author and, Love in a Dying Town, the Narican, the Cloaked Deception, which I will have a couple follow-up books on in the coming years. But yeah, Amazon's a great resource for finding my books.
Great. And you also do a podcast, the Den of Discussion. Can you tell something about us? There are a lot of Indian. Yes.
No, happy to. Thank you for asking. It's about really anything that touches the human condition. And so initially I started with writing and publishing and maybe, mental health a bit, depression. A lot of writers, struggle with depression, as I certainly have, more in the past. But it's really about anything that touches the human condition, and how people who are moving the ball forward. Again, we talk about leadership. Well, again, this starts at the ground level. So we've had on attorneys who understand the courts. I've had on financial people. I've had just had a brilliant writer on yesterday who had been very depressed and struggling, and then he had sort of a massive awakening and all sorts of information coming to him. So a lot of spiritual, creative types on the show, writers on the show. Again, it's really just about anyone who's trying to improve humanity and move it forward to help us all evolve. So, again, the interconnectedness, we all help each other move forward. So that's kind of what it is, the Den of Discussion, really anything that touches the human condition and illuminates that.
Right. Absolutely right, Doug. And in fact, I'll put all the details in the description on YouTube so that people can access to your book as well as, to your podcast whenever they need to.
Thank you.
With this, we've talked so much, and I would say that, in fact, I only see how much is left out. So it's been a great discussion, great knowing, and at the end of the day, human beings, however aloof or afar they are from each other, but the fact is that they have to realize, if they have to, exist, is that they are interconnected.
Right. We're all here together, right?
We are all here together, and there is only one word, Earth, and Mars is far, far away. With this,
yes, it is.
Yes,
a little too far.
Yeah, too far. And with this, it's a wrap on this edition of the KAJ Masterclass. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Dad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, AJ. Yes, let's all take care of each other and our world here.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.